Luke Abrams parked at his desk and waited for the Grateful Dead's Ripple song to end before turning off the engine and opening the door. He looked at the neon sign above the building's entrance and felt proud when he saw Abrams Manufactured above the door. The guard at the door greeted him as Luke headed to his corner office on the top floor. His CFO told him the company was now worth $20 million, and not a month went by that some firm or venture capitalist didn't want to discuss buying the business. Luke wasn't interested because he loved his job, his business, his team of people, and he saw no reason to cash out at this young age. Life was good. All these years, his family life was wonderful. He and Becky, his wife of 14 years, initially struggled when he started his business, but were now living very comfortably. Becky worked part-time as a marketing consultant and often worked from home. She was tall, 5 feet 8 inches, with fiery red hair and an incredible body. Her breasts and ass were perfect, and she had bonus legs that went on for miles. Their sex life has been really good, although Luke has noticed a definite reduction in the last 6 months, from 3-4 times a week to just 1 time a week. Becky also seemed to be more attached to her phone, sending messages to God knows who, and one day when he picked it up to check the match results, he noticed that it was now password protected, which did not happen in the past. He talked to her about sex, and how she had become more reserved and quiet in their interactions, but she said that she felt older and more tired, and he should just know that she loved him more than he ever did, or could imagine. They talked about having children. She didn't want to, yet, but he told her how important it was to him, and she agreed that she would be off birth control for 6 months. She wasn't as excited about it as he was, but he thought she was excited about the idea. As Luke sat in his office thinking about this, his friend and VP of sales, Chad Warwick, walked into his office looking sheepish. Chad was his friend in college, and they played football and hockey together in high school. He wasn't his best friend, but Luke considered him close. Now the relationship was a mixture of friendship, but also Luke was the boss, and although he treated his employees as partners, ultimately Luke decided what they should do. Chad looked in the door and said, "Boss, I feel like crap today. I think I have the flu or something, so if you don't mind, I'll go home to bed and come back either later or tomorrow. I ended with a proposal for new climate control systems. See you tomorrow." "Okay, Chad. Hang in there. And I hope you feel better." Luke decided to work more on the new business line he was about to create and opened his workstation to pull out files. He noticed that he had an old version and remembered that he had been working on it over the weekend and saved the files on his home computer instead of uploading it to the company server. He decided he would ask Becky to email the file instead of driving home. He tried to call the home line, but the phone went to voicemail. He tried to call Becky's phone, but it was off, which he found odd considering she had a work day. Well, it's okay. He'll get home in 20 minutes. Luke was enjoying the weather and some good tunes on NPR as he turned into his neighborhood and pulled up to his house. He spotted a car in the driveway that looked familiar, and it didn't take him long to realize it was his friend Chad's Lexus. Luke parked on the street, walked up the driveway, and quietly opened the front door. It was quiet on the first floor. Neither the lights nor the radio were on. Becky was not in the office at her desk. He walked into the kitchen and then heard moans and voices coming from the master bedroom. In his mind and heart, he could not believe what he already knew in his gut. Someone was having sex with his wife in his bed. He grabbed a long Wusthof knife from the shelf and walked slowly up the stairs. He stood in the hallway, obscured by the door frame so they couldn't see him, but he could hear what they were saying. They were hugging and talking, and he heard Becky say, "Chad, we can do this a few more times. I think Luke is starting to become suspicious of my aloofness and my constant texting on the phone, and I make love to him no more than once a week because I feel so guilty, and it's so wrong to make love to you and then to him the next day. I'm really enjoying our little fling for the last 4 months. It's my indulgence to have dirty and illicit sex before I go off the pill to have kids. So, I want this time to be unforgettable. because this will be the last time here, and then the Denver conference, and then we will be done. Luke remembered that Becky told him she was going to a marketing conference in Denver in 2 weeks, and quickly realized that it coincided with a sales conference that Chad would be attending in Denver that same weekend. Luke was crushed by what he heard. He pulled out his phone and turned on the video, slowly peeking around the door frame. Luke burst into the room, filming with a phone in one hand and a knife in the other. He grabbed Becky by the hair, pulled her away from Chad, spun her around, and pushed her onto the bed. She screamed and saw that it was Luke. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell open, and she screamed, "Luke, this doesn't mean anything." At that moment, she tried to get up and go to Luke, and Chad tried to move to the edge of the bed and stand up, but Luke held out the knife and shouted, "Both of you sit on the bed and shut the hell up or you'll find a 12-inch blade in your chest." Fast. They both sat down and pulled the sheets up. Becky began to sob uncontrollably, and Chad began to tell Luke, "Boss, it's really nothing. Just sex. Just a distraction for us. This means nothing. Lukey, I love you. It was just meaningless sex with Chad. It doesn't change anything about my feelings for you. This was just the last time I planted some wild oats before you, and I settled down with the kids. Please, Luke, it's nothing. Send Chad away. Come and hug me, and I will fix everything." Luke looked at her as if she had lost her mind. "Becky, doesn't this mean anything? Well, I think you've proven that our marriage means nothing to you. You have demonstrated that you have no respect for me and that I was a fool for believing that you loved me. How can you say you love me when you've been having sex with Chad in my own fucking bed for months? You want me to cuddle with you? Damn it. I can barely look at you and I'll never touch you again. That's for sure. Damn it. Now just sit down and shut up." Becky recoiled at the sight of his anger and pain. He had never spoken to her like that. He practically idolized her and treated her with love and respect, and his answer cut straight to the soul. With that, Luke made a quick call, looked at Chad, and said, "Janie, this is Luke. I'm sending you a video of Chad having sex with my wife Becky in my bed. I don't know if you knew that he was abusing you and the kids, and I'm just so sorry that I have to tell you that." Luke was silent for a few minutes before hanging up, and then said to Chad, "She's telling you not to worry about coming home. Obviously, this is not the first time you have betrayed your life and your children. Now add that he betrayed his friend and his boss and ruined 2 marriages. What a worthless sack of crap you are. I'll give you one chance to save your job. Tell me exactly when it started and how many times you two have been together." Becky looked at Luke and said, "Don't put us through this. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything, and it stops right now. Please." Luke's look, full of hatred and pain, made her pull back even more, press herself into the headboard, and look away. She continued to cry and sob as Chad responded to Luke. "Luke, please don't abandon our friendship because of this, and don't let it affect the good work I do for the company. Becky means nothing to me, and I mean nothing to her. We were tempted only by the sexual lust of an illicit affair. We are meeting for the 4th time. The first time we were both in Denver for different conferences and I knew she would be there. I called her the first night to go to dinner. Well, we ate and drank a lot and danced and really felt a spark for each other, so that night and the next we went up to my room. Then about a month later, Becky called me and said you were going out of town for the day to visit a new construction site and asked me to come. 3 weeks later, we got a room at the Hilton Hotel, met for lunch at noon and had sex there. And now, she called me and asked me to get sick and come. We were going to meet at the next conference in Denver next month for the last time and spend 3 nights trying to get this done. We both felt guilty for doing this to you and my family. Becky knows you want kids and she'll get off the pill, so we decided that was it, and we were going to be good spouses again. I'm so sorry, Luke. Looking back, I knew it was so wrong, and now I have ruined my marriage, and possibly your marriage and my career, if you can't forgive us." Becky looked at Luke and said, "Yes, Luke. I was so fascinated by this mystery. There was nothing wrong with you, Luke. I love you. I have never loved anyone but you, and I want your children to grow old with you. You treated me like a queen. Sex with Chad was fun, but it was nothing compared to making love with you. Please don't leave me and our marriage because of a mistake. It didn't mean anything. This means nothing? Do you even know me? How can you think that allowing another man to be intimate with you means nothing to our marriage? Do you think I will ever be able to get over the pain of being deceived? Move past the lies and trust you again someday. How could you think that I would ever want to touch your body again? How do you think I can have the same spark, the same connection, and the same love that I had for you after you insulted me like that? How can you not see the strain this has already put on our marriage? Lack of conversation and communication. Reducing lovemaking and turning it into just mechanical sex. One drunken night may be a mistake, but planning and hosting meetings at out-of-town conventions and in our homes is a business, not a mistake. What the hell is wrong with you, damn it? Becky began to understand for the first time what she had done. She convinced herself that this was meaningless sex, and it wouldn't hurt her relationship, maybe even make it stronger. But when Luke spoke, she realized that she had become emotionally and physically distant from him. She didn't understand why, because she loved and wanted only him. Maybe it was the guilt she was trying to bury that was eating away at her and their relationship. She thought her affair would never be discovered. Luke trusted her so much. She saw that this trust would never be the same. She thought that Luke loved her so much he would forgive, and she would quickly make him forget by being a loving and caring wife and having children. Now she realized how she had deceived herself. She deluded herself into thinking she deserved it, and it would make her a better wife. Now she saw how much pain and disrespect she had poured on the man she loved so much and wanted to have children with him and a long and happy life. My God, she thought, have I really ruined everything? How do I get through this? All she could do was look at Luke and say, "Please, Luke, please forgive me for hurting you. I didn't think much about what I was doing. I didn't know it would be so devastating. I never meant to disrespect you. I never wanted to hurt you as much as I do now. How the hell could you think you weren't disrespecting me when you made comments like that and had sex with another man in my own bed? You disgust me?" Luke looked at Chad and said, "There's no way to save your fucking job. Don't bother coming tomorrow, you're fired. Now get the hell out of my house." Chad started to get up, and so did Becky, but Luke yelled at her, "Stay there and don't move." She sank into the bed as she saw the pain and hurt on Luke's face turn to anger and pure hatred. My God, what have I done to offend such a good man and turn his love for me into hatred? Chad grabbed his clothes, flew down the stairs, out the door, and sped off in his car. Luke looked at Becky and began to cry. She got up from the bed and tried to walk up to him and hug him, but he looked disgusted at her, turned away and raised the knife to keep her from coming closer to him. She burst into tears and ran to the bathroom, locked the door, turned on the shower, and sank to the floor. She hoped that maybe if she gave Luke space, he would calm down and they could talk. This was her only hope. She cried and washed herself for half an hour. After washing, toweling off, and putting on a robe, she quietly opened the bathroom door, fearing another furious scream from Luke and knowing that she deserved it. But the room was quiet. She looked out into the corridor, and the house seemed quiet. "Luke, I will prepare a spare bedroom for you and stay away from you for as long as you want until you calm down enough to allow me to talk to you, explain my actions, and ask for forgiveness." She didn't hear an answer. She saw that the dresser drawers were open and empty, and most of the clothes in his closet were gone. 2 large suitcases from the closet disappeared. She then turned around and saw a 12-inch butcher knife embedded in the hilt in the pillow and mattress. She realized Luke was gone and could only hope that he would stay safe, not hurt himself, and answer her calls when he calmed down in a day or two. She walked into the spare bedroom, threw herself on the bed, curled up in the fetal position, and cried herself to sleep. Luke went to his office and spent a very restless night on the sofa in the adjacent conference room. He notified HR and security of Chad's termination. Later that morning, Chad actually showed up at the scene, assuming Luke had cooled off, but security took his badge, walked him to his car, and told him that if he showed up again, the police would be called. Luke spent a couple of hours alone at his desk, wondering where to go next. He clearly understood that, despite the depth of his love for Becky, their marriage had come to an end. He would never be able to feel the same spark of joy, trust, and deep connection of his heart and soul with her, and this meant that the marriage was a failure. Pride, resentment, anger, jealousy, it doesn't matter what you call it. She was no longer his life partner. There was no question of having children. It was all over. Luke called his CFO, and they had a 4-hour, very detailed discussion about the value of the company and what Luke decided to do. His right-hand man, a financier, was stunned to hear about Chad and Becky. He begged him not to do anything rash, to let his anger and pain subside for a few weeks, and then decide what he wanted to do. But Luke had already made his decision. Becky woke up in the morning, and the pain and hurt that she saw on Luke's face quickly fell upon her as she fully came to her senses. "Oh my God, how could I be so stupid? Some mediocre sex with someone I barely like, much less love, may have ruined my marriage to the only man I truly love. What the hell is wrong with me?" She was determined to fix this, to get Luke back, to get them both back to the way they were before she was stupid enough to have an affair. She was sure that Luke loved her so much that he would never leave her. She couldn't resist calling him on his cell phone. It immediately went to voicemail, so she left him a message. "Luke, I'm so sorry. I love you so much, and I know I hurt you and I'm so ashamed. But Luke, you love me, and I love you, and we can get through this. I'll do whatever you want to make it go away. I promise that I will be the best wife and mother anyone can hope for. Please come to me or call me. I need you. Please talk to me, Luke." There was no response from Luke that day or the next. On the third day, she called the office administrator, Brenda. Brenda was very close to Luke, practically idolized him, and Luke told her about what happened between Chad and Becky. Brenda answered Becky's call and told her in no uncertain terms that Luke was busy, instructed her not to allow her to call him personally, and that he would be happy to be left alone until he was ready. Becky assumed she meant being willing to talk, but Brenda didn't actually say that. Well, at this point, Becky assumed that Luke needed time. Becky called Chad and now knew that Luke had indeed fired him from his job. She also heard that Chad's wife kicked him out, and he moved back in with his parents. He hinted that he wanted to come and talk to Becky about getting Luke to forgive them, but she told him to fuck off and that she never wanted to talk to him again. She placed most of the blame on him, although subconsciously she knew that she was deceiving herself, and she felt just as guilty, if not more, than Chad. She couldn't understand why she actually did it and how stupid it was to risk everything she had with Luke. Becky gave Luke a week and then couldn't stand it. She called his cell phone, but the number was no longer in service. She called his office and was told that Luke would not be available and she should stop calling. It was too much for her. She had to do anything. She wanted to keep her affair a secret, hoping and assuming that Luke wouldn't want his family and friends to know that she had cheated on him. But now she started calling all his friends and asking if they knew where he was staying and what he was thinking about. They all responded that they had nothing to say to her, and that Luke told them it was their own business. The disdain with which they treated her made her realize that Luke had probably told them about the affair, which added to her shame and sadness. Becky eventually called Luke's parents to see if he was staying with them, but when they picked up and she introduced herself and said hello, they hung up. She called again, and they went to voicemail. She went to Luke's company and persuaded the security to let her into the lobby. They called Brenda, who approached Becky, and asked directly what she needed. Becky was close to tears and said, "I want my husband to come down and talk to me. He should respect his wife enough to talk to me and let me explain. He should respect his wife the same way she respected him and their marriage. Maybe you need to think more about what you did. Anyway, Luke doesn't work here anymore. He sold the company and moved out of the area and made it very clear that he was not sharing with you any information about his current condition, well-being, or location. Now please leave, or I will ask security to remove you from the premises." Becky rushed home in complete confusion. Sold the company? He will never do this. Left the area? Why shouldn't he talk to her? She sat down with her email and tried to write him a long letter of apology, but when she sent it to both his personal and work email addresses, it bounced. The addresses were invalid. She called his parents again, but they blocked her number. She returned to the spare bedroom and collapsed on the bed. For the next 4 weeks, Becky lived like a zombie. She hadn't heard anything from Luke, not a word about where he was or how he was coping with their marriage. In desperation, she hired a private investigation firm and was eventually sent a report with limited information. They told her that Luke had sold his company, and although the exact price was not made public, it was estimated to go for more than $20 million. They told her that he closed all of Becky's accounts and joint accounts and credit cards, canceled his phone, internet, and email, sold all of his valuables, and apparently left town. They told her that Luke had paid off the mortgage on the house and issued a deed in her name. They were unable to get any of his friends, work colleagues, or relatives to tell them anything about his whereabouts or how to contact him. 8 weeks after Luke left, a man came to the front door and handed Becky an envelope. She saw that Luke's name was written on the address label and opened the envelope, hoping to get some information. The first thing that came out when she opened the envelope was his wedding ring, then some documents, and then a photograph, which was cut into strips. After piecing together the photograph, she saw that it was their wedding portrait, which had been put through a shredder. She broke down and cried for several minutes until she was able to open the rest of the contents of the envelope. There were legal documents and a letter. There was a flash drive in the envelope. She grabbed the letter and began to read. "Becky, I know that you wanted to see me, talk to me, and were sure that we could end your affair. You thought it was just meaningless sex, a mistake, something I should just forget, and that we would go back to our marriage as it was before you decided to break our wedding vows and my trust. I was amazed that you could fool yourself into thinking that the same thing, or even close to what we had, would ever be possible. I know that you never loved me, at least the way I loved you, because you were able to deceive me. You didn't seem to understand how much pain you caused. No one had ever hurt me like this. And that it came from the woman I loved more than life itself was too much to ever forgive. I can never trust you again. I can never touch you or make love to you. Maybe you don't remember what happened, or it wasn't important to you. If so, I have attached a video of you and Chad ruining our marriage. Your words alone are enough to break my heart every time I think about them. From the calls I initially received from our very close friends and family about how I could have left you and why I was so cruel to disappear from your life, it became clear to me that you never took responsibility for your actions. I am very sorry to say that this same video, with a different letter, was sent to these people so that they would understand the depth of the betrayal and that nothing could be done about it. I was so devastated and destroyed by you that I decided to take revenge. I am not happy with my actions, but I believe that they were the only path open to me. I have decided that from this day forward, you will never hear from me again. You'll never see me again. And I will never return to our home, to our city, maybe even to our state. I'll probably never understand why you did this, what brought you to this. I hope you realize this before you get into another serious relationship, and I hope you remember my pain before you cheat on someone again. I hope that someday in the near future, I will be able to overcome the pain, humiliation, and disrespect I went through and be able to remember the old times in our relationship that were filled with love. I hope that someday, instead of the hatred I feel for you, I can feel at least indifference, or that I can find forgiveness or understanding. Be that as it may, you will never know. You may not care, but I will never know, and I will live with it. Goodbye. The last package of documents in the envelope was headed Dissolution of Marriage, but at that moment Becky could not see anything through her tears and collapsed on the floor. Epilogue. It had been 5 years since Luke disappeared, and, as the letter said, Becky had not heard a word from anyone about his health, his spirit, his whereabouts, or his life. Luke was quite generous in his divorce settlement, offering her $1 million, a house and property, in lieu of any ongoing financial support. The lawyer told her that this was the best offer she could get because the $22 million that Luke sold the company for was not held in the United States and would never be available for any legal compensation. Becky really didn't care. In her opinion, she didn't deserve anything and would never fight what Luke thought was fair. Her life was initially very difficult, as friends and family saw a devastating video of her having sex with Chad in her marital bed. She understood how much she had hurt Luke, and how she had made him hurt her by sending the video. She also understood that this was a way to prevent anyone from asking about what happened and whether they could get back together. She felt extreme humiliation, embarrassment, and pain from her friends and family seeing this, but she understood that it was not as bad as what she did to Luke. She lived with her shame and, at the urging of her parents, decided to see a therapist to work on her grief and depression and try to change her life. She went on a few dates but never seemed to enjoy herself and didn't let into his private thoughts and pain, so that nothing ever progressed beyond a few painfully awkward encounters. There were a few nights where she tried to find solace in sex. They were so awkward, so humiliating, and served as such a dark reminder of what once was and how she had sunk to this point that she could no longer bear the thought of meaningless sex. When Luke left, he took the photo albums, and she had no photographs of them together, and with each passing year, the memories of his appearance, his voice, his spirit and personality, his loving touch, gradually disappeared from her life. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.